So, welcome to a new edition of Let's Humanize the Workplace, where today we are going to address supplier diversity, right? All about the power of partnership. But before I dive in, and I need to properly introduce myself. Hi, my name is Vivian Acquah, and I'm a certified inclusion strategist helping companies when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. And there's a lot happening, from the US end where every day there is something new that is targeting DEI and also to help demystify, right? DEI stands for fairness. It stands for fairness for everybody. And there is this personal attack, but also professional attack on different businesses, different people, even people being doxxed. I've seen also that part of that where they are being doxxed on Reddit or on other platforms. And I would just like for us to reach back and realize that we're dealing with humans. We're dealing with humans. And is it okay for you to attack somebody else just because you don't approve their way of living, right? Just because you don't approve inclusion or you don't really understand what the definition is of that. So there is this campaign going on where every day there is an attack and it can do something to you on a personal level and also professional level. The advice that I will give to those who are affected by that or those who feel stress in their body, I would say from time to time do a detox. It might be that you might skip some people or you might hide certain posts because of that, because it can work triggering and it can work really traumatizing as well. So, I first and foremost, your mental well being, our mental well being should be number one. And second, be critical about where you consume your information and your news and do fact check. Do fact check. I know it's exhausting and it can be exhausting, but I just wanted to share these words of hope. And also know that I just watched a snippet of what happened at the Super Bowl where Kendrick Lamar did an amazing presentation. And guess who's there? Somebody, a certain change of power was there. So it was really good to see Kendrick Lamar and also bring in so many other people to highlight why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. And for that, I want to end, and my session or my words of thought of words and introduce the guest speakers of today. So today, the main topic is the power of partnership, harnessing supplier diversity to build and create to building resilient and thriving businesses, but also it plays a crucial role in making that happen. So my guest speakers for today are Lushentha Naidoo. She is the managing director of the European Supplier Diversity Program, ESDP, a non-profit organization based in the Netherlands, but also focused in the Netherlands and in Germany and also in France, right? That's right,
Right.
Lushentha. And
Certifying there, but ac open to the whole of Europe.
open to the whole of Europe. So those who are watching, open to the whole of Europe. Let's get this started as well. And the other guest speaker that I have is Andrea Fimian, and she is the owner of FIPS Consulting, a supply chain consulting firm, a core competency in inclusive sourcing, located in Switzerland. So both of these ladies are passionate about proposes inclusive procurement, but let me bring up a definition because it might be so that you don't know what supplier diversity stands for, right? So I want to make sure that supplier diversity is a business strategy for incorporating diverse owned suppliers into the company supply chain and business practices. So the caveat is that the ownership must be 51% of an underrepresented group. So think about your company spending. How much of that percentage is going to those who are underrepresented groups? So, and also, how are you leveraging that, creating innovation, creating creativity, but also creating a better brand because you are ethically doing this because you want to do better, right? So, I want to make sure that you know the definition, and then we'll start with the show. So, Lucinda, what is your definition of humanizing the workplace?
Before we get into that definition, can I just add on to your definition of supply
Mm-hmm.
diversity? Because I want to make it clear, because as you said, there's so much misinformation out there.
Mm-hmm.
Supplier diversity is not about positive discrimination. It's about equity. At the
Yes.
end of the day, no matter where you're from, what your background is the best business will get the contract. And what we're trying to do with that, with supply diversity, is exposing companies to different kind of businesses, diverse businesses. Just wanted to add that on, just to make sure that the facts are there. Sorry.
Yes,
And back to your
definitely,
question.
definitely.
Back to your question. What is my
What
definition of
mhm.
humanizing the workplace? And just a little bit about myself. So, I'm Lushentha Naidoo. I'm the managing director of ESDP, and I come from the most colorful country in the world, the Rainbow Nation, which is South Africa. So I have a lot of experience with diversity, and I've also lived in 7 countries in my 15 years career. So I really have a good understanding of different cultures. And for me, what humanizing the workplace mean is a lot of it is to do with respect,
Mm,
respecting each other, employees respecting employees, and respect within between employees. Is under take going that extra mile, understanding each other's different cultures, where they come from, what their story, does everyone bring to the table? Because everybody has a story and they bring something to the table, and that's the power of diversity. It's about creating a workplace that employees feel valued and respected. That for me is really, it's bringing that empathy to the workplace.
yeah, I really love what you're sharing and also bringing that cultural intelligence in, right? Because you living in different countries and also understanding the different culture aspects of it and understanding that everybody is human, we can do so much more when we learn from other cultures as well. So I want to pass it
Yeah.
on to Andrea. What's your take on the question?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Vivian. I think it's diversity is a fact, right? The world is diverse, and humanizing the workplace for me is really about not just the workplace, but the whole seeing a company as a holistic, from a holistic view, like from their clients to the workplace to the supply chain, right? So really see it as a whole picture and humanizing the company. It's what I would rather say than just
Mm-hmm.
the workplace,
Agree.
which is really
Yeah.
including the whole environment of where a company is located, what kind of customers they have, but also who are they working with.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And especially how they are treating the people, not
Right.
all the different stakeholders. So not only the employees, but all the different stakeholders.
Yeah,
I like that you made
exactly.
that connection with the topic of today, which is supplier diversity. So thank you, Andrea. And let's start with you, back to you to Lushenta. So Europe, right? You have a thing for Europe, and I wanna ask you the following question. Why do you think that Europe is lagging behind other parts of the world when it comes to supplier diversity and inclusive procurement?
Yeah. So, a little bit of history about supply diversity. I know when you talk about in Europe, it sounds like it's such a new topic, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been around for 50 years. It started in the US after the Civil Rights Movement. South Africa after apartheid, so 30 years ago. In the UK, 20 years ago. But here I find when I moved to Europe, diversity was still so fixated just on gender and
Mm-hmm.
and diversity within the workplace, and there's
Still
the
is.
biggest, yeah, it still is. And that was for me like, oh, I always looked at Europe so progressive, and it is in many aspects, but definitely not when it comes to diversity. That's why a big passion of mine is education and awareness. That's the way to unlock it. We're still new here, and ESDP is now just 1 year old, and I find that whenever you talk about race, ethnicity in Europe, it's a very uncomfortable topic. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you have to get uncomfortable to get uncomfortable. So I urge everyone to educate themselves about it, to understand it rather than making assumptions. And why it's also harder to get it off the ground here is because you have policies in place in the US, in the UK, and South Africa. Here, it's a nice to have. It's dependent on company values to actually drive it forward. And now, with this past month of shakeups, you can see the companies that have the stronger values that really want to push it. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Ideally, you would have to have companies to have it as part of their DNA, and senior leadership is the one that's going to be driving it forward. As much as your ERGs want to have, will push it forward, it has to be made a decision at the top, and I'm not seeing enough of that right now.
Yeah. And I also want to address, I know that these questions will come up from my side, right? I'm an ESDP certified supplier, where when companies are not aware of supplier diversity, it leaves them up to have their own rules. And it's a pain. It's really painful to see certain organizations still having the 90 days payment term while somebody has done the work. Or there is this whole mystery of where to send your invoice, right? And then 60 days later, you're still not paid because you still haven't received a purchase order. I have a procurement background. Many of you don't know that, but I know that sometimes the systems, the ERP systems, are not helpful. But I've also dealt with clients who created a different route to Rome to still get me paid, right? Yeah, Andrea. So let's bring the following question up. And what unique value do diverse businesses bring to the supply chains and the broader economy?
Wow, yeah. I mean that list is very long, and I I think I'm just going to pick out a few advantages and business values that you get out of having an inclusive supply chain. And I think if if you just think about all the advantages and all the business values that you get out of having diverse teams, you kind of can apply that as well to the supply chain, because you want to have a different way of thinking. You want to have innovative thinking. You want to have resiliency. You want to have kind of a risk mitigation with working with different suppliers. You want to have more sustainability, especially currently with all the ESG and the targets that you have to achieve, the CSRDs, the CSDDDs, all the reporting requirements that are in place or coming up, especially in Europe. And you also have higher savings. That are studies out there from Harvard Business Review. You can also find that on my webpage. So there's a lot of positive and revenue growth reasons, as well as also higher savings. So the list is on and on and on. I could go on forever, but I think the most important thing is, as what Lushentha said before, it's not about positive discrimination. It's about opening doors for diverse owned businesses to participate in opportunities that you have as a company. And then you see what's out there, right? But I think giving that chance to actually participate and be seen and be having the chance to show what your capabilities are is already a great way of creating more equality, equity. And I haven't even touched on the social economical impact that supplier diversity or inclusive sourcing has. So there's lots of reasons. And just touching one point maybe on the social economical impact. I mean, diverse owned businesses usually hire more people from diverse backgrounds. There are studies that they pay higher wages to their employees. So just all of that, there's a lot of reasons why inclusive sourcing does make sense, does help creating a more equal world.
I want to just highlight one of the things that is often missed, especially now that Europe is, every year there is a target that is including the different businesses that have to apply to ESG and CSR reporting, right? And oftentimes the topic supplier diversity is missed. Whilst this is a Trojan horse that you can use to report that your company values inclusive procurement. And these are the measures that you show, and this is what you have done. I know that, when people think about measures and data and stuff, that means that you have to the tweak the ERP systems, which is also in an investment. But sometimes you can start small. Sometimes it's just as having a conversation, for instance, with ESDP, or having a conversation maybe with Andrea or myself to find out what are the benefits, not only for myself as an individual, but also for your company, right? It's about creating a win-win when you level the playing field for other people to engage and make sure that with the talent shortage that is coming up right now, and if you are not tapping into supply diversity, you'll be missing out, and you're tapping only in the same pool with the same people, which leads to the same results, which isn't innovative, which isn't sustainable. I'm just putting that in. So to each of you, let's share one challenge, each of you. What are some of the common challenges companies face when trying to implement inclusive procurement practices? I've mentioned one, the ERP system might be a headache, right? So that's off the table. What is another challenge for you, Andrea?
Well, for me, and I think we heard it from Lushentha before, I think the biggest challenge is the understanding of supplier diversity and inclusion and inclusive sourcing practices overall, because even I've been in this for over 10 years now, and it's still a lot of talking about what is inclusive sourcing. What do you do? It's not about buying from companies which might have a woman as a CEO. It's really about this social impact that you can have, economical impact, with buying from companies which might be which are owned, controlled, and managed by people from underrepresented groups, but also like including social enterprises and so on. So I think that's the biggest challenge, that it's really still lack of understanding what supplier diversity really is, and creating visibility that it exists. And I just want to add on to what you said before, that it's a Trojan horse, because there's companies are spending about 40 to 70% of their revenue in their supply chain. So they really put a lot of efforts into DEI, having diverse teams, workforce, and so on, but they're really missing out on all of the opportunities in the supply chain. And I think that's...
And how much percent are we asking to start, right? I do believe like 5 to 10% to
well,
go
that's
to
already a
just to
lot in
start
Europe.
supply diversity, right? 5 to 10%. Let's challenge each other. Even when you do 1% when you're starting out, that means 1% of your spending goes out in investing in people from underrepresented groups who are also investing in their communities as well. So you're uplifting not only one person, but the whole community behind them as well. I just wanted to add that to what you were saying.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Lushentha?
No, and just to build on what Andrea was saying, and also you, is that people, a lot of the time, I'm just educating people on supply diversity because I think, oh, is a diversity within my supplies? Is that I'm having that gender split? So that's where we
Yeah.
are. My big passion is education and awareness. And I always quote Nelson Mandela is education is the most powerful tool we can use to change the world. So this year we're launching our education academy with ESDP. And it's not just, we have two parts where we educate the corporates because we have to bring them along on this journey, and also developing our suppliers to get them to meet halfway, because everyone focuses on the visible part, which is workforce diversity. And as Andrea said, most of the spend is with your suppliers. And that's where it's low hanging fruit. So what we're doing with ESDP, the other advocacy groups, is bringing shedding light on that, bringing visibility of it. And it's easy to say in Europe, oh, well, we have GDPR rules, so we can't do this. But that's where ESDP comes in. It's taken a long time for us to get certification off the ground. And this is where we are that link between the corporates and the suppliers, because we can ask those questions. Because I'm tired of lawyers saying, no, it's GDPR, you can't do this. Yes, you can. If you actually go into the detail, you can understand that actually
You can ask for consent. That's the thing. You can ask for
exactly.
consent.
consent, aggregation of data. Because
Mm,
when a supplier is certified with ESDP, we will never share the ethnicity of a business with a corporate. All they know is they're
mhm.
ESD certified, and that should be enough. And that's also us for a way to protect our suppliers, because that's the most important thing is that suppliers feel protected. So this is where we can come in, because before it was only gender, but we're really opening up the doors in that. And when we started doing certification, people like lawyers will come from the corporate lawyers will come to us and say you can't do this. And we said this is how we're doing it. We had one of the best lawyers working with us to actually get this off the ground. And it's almost a year since, and we're doing it. So listen,
How
it's
many
always
people have you
impossible to
certified
yeah.
now? How many people are, or how many
We,
businesses
we're,
are certified? Yeah.
we're growing. We have a database of about 500. Right now we're at
Mhm.
35, which is good
Yeah.
for like in the first year. But you know
Mhm.
me and my team, we're ambitious. We're targeting to get to 200 this year. And
Yeah.
it's possible. It's
Yeah.
about, and this is why we're having all these campaigns about why and the benefits of it. And this is why I love going out and speaking with you, because you're our poster girl in terms of like certification. It's open doors for you. And
Mhm.
once we have more and more of those success stories, that we'll get there. And then
Yeah.
and one more point on this and why it's such a challenge is like, listen, the leadership teams here are not diverse. They have to have buy-in, and it really comes from the top. When they have targets, and I'm not saying targets to suppliers, but or have policies and like, what am I doing to actually open up the door to diverse suppliers? So by coming to our events, you guys came to the event we had at the Heineken experience. It's that feeling of community and um, the power of diversity, and that's when people start getting engaged. But if they're just sitting behind their desk and talking about supplier diversity, it's harder to move the dial. So I encourage people, whether it's an ESDP event or another advocacy, go there and engage with the talent suppliers we're finding.
The main theme that I got from ever connecting with ESCP, I know that ESCP is officially 1 year old. However, it was a project, and that project was at least 2 or 3 years. So just to give people some context, that ESCP has been around for a while now, but it was a project. And then when the project finalized, they finalized and became a company, a nonprofit company, to elevate supplier diversity within Europe, just to give that clarification as well. And also know that no, I wanna share the following question, and that is success stories when it comes to supplier diversity. Let's start with you, Andrea. Success stories from businesses, corporate or the businesses. What is it that you want to share?
Yeah, so maybe quickly a bit to my background. So I was actually
Mm-hmm.
also on the other side. I was a corporate. I was running the supplier diversity program for EMEA at IBM for several years. So that's where I also got to know the whole concept of supplier diversity and inclusion and so on. And I started my own business because I was so passionate about the topic. And really seeing that there is so much that we can do in Europe about inclusive supply chains. So I started my own business 2021. But before I was kind of on the other side. So I'm now a small women-owned certified We Connect business, but I was in corporate, and I've seen many success stories there, or I've been participating and being part of seeing these success stories. I want to highlight maybe one or two. One was especially thinking about resiliency and flexibility and agility of diverse businesses. I want to highlight an example from time during COVID, where I was responsible also to buy all the PPE for EMEA for IBM employees. And we were struggling because you can imagine all the corporates are going to their facility management or whoever supplier who would normally provide these products like sanitizer, gloves, masks, and so on. So they were all totally out of stock. They didn't know where to get anything. And where we actually were successful and where we got mainly the main amount of our PPE for IBM employees throughout Europe was from a diverse business in the UK. So this just shows they have they were totally agile, they were reacting fast, they were totally resilient to all the changes, were adapting in a like very quickly. So I think that shows what diverse businesses can do to your business, to your company. It really was a game changer, because people could go to the office, and where other corporates were totally had to shut down and nobody was able to just move around. So one story, I want to share another one, because I think that's what really stays in people's minds, is the success stories, and really having that tangible, because it seems like supplier diversity, it's so abstract. It doesn't, it feels like women-owned businesses is like, what, they might have a beauty shop, or people might think of that, but there are really cool success stories, which I think is so much more worth sharing, because that's what stays in people's mind. And so maybe one success story we had also at IBM was with a tier 2 supplier. So the supplier of our supplier at that time was a diverse owned business, and they provided a small part of consulting and services to IBM as a tier 2, so the supplier of the supplier. We had the tier 1, so the big RFP for that whole project, where we actually also invited the diverse business, which was a tier 2. They had a great pitch, great proposal, and actually won that business. And they were moving from a couple of thousand pounds of revenue to a couple of million pounds of revenue, and really grown their business. And I think that just shows what kind of impact supplier diversity can have on a business, and really also on the whole environment of that business.
Yeah, and what about you, Lushentha?
I also want to use a personal example from my work experience. So I also have a corporate background. I worked for Unilever 14 years around the world, and it's similar. So I grew up in uncertainty in South Africa. We're so used to like, oh, you wake up and the South African rand depreciated 10%. Okay, these are the actions you take, in the business. Came to Europe, and Europe was so used to stability, and then in a year you had COVID, you had Brexit, the war in Ukraine, and everything was just going all over the place. You couldn't source from somewhere because you're a big globalized company. And that's when we started activating with small businesses, because they were agile. They could come around with quick solutions. And that's how you managed to overcome that uncertainty that time. And it was amazing in terms, because you could get things turned around in less than half the time than a bigger business that you were using. Or they would come with the different solutions. But guys, you want this, but have you thought about this? We can do this for you. So that was the big value of that. Whereas everyone else was, oh my God, I'm sourcing from here, but now with Brexit or what's happening in Russia, we can't source this. So came with really innovative solutions. But a personal one from a workplace example was where the most diverse team I worked in was also the time where I found the most innovation and creative with the team, working with suppliers too. I worked in transformation, in supply chain, in network transformation, and it comes to a point where you'll have to close factories, and that's the hardest things you do. And if anyone knows me, I always put people first. And we worked with different suppliers. We were like, okay, what solutions could we come up with? And came up with like circular economy projects, helping get government grants so that we didn't have to close down a factory, but could work with smaller suppliers to been like save the jobs and then turn it into like a plastic recycling plant. That was for me, I was like, that's the power of diversity within the team and within your suppliers.
Yeah. And from a personal perspective, right? As a SME, small business owner in the Netherlands, it's not always easy to collaborate with the big corporates, because they have different departments, different people, You might have a contact person who will give you the assignment, but if that contact person is not sharing their purchase order number with you, that's when the headache starts. So to be part of ESDP, but also to be certified and shorten that amount of time, but also asking the right questions ahead of time, like where can I send my invoice? What are your payment terms, right? Because sometimes some companies are hijacking innovation and creativity and also the salaries of people who are in small businesses. I'm just dropping it out there. It can be painful. And to be on this journey together, not only for myself, but also applying empathy towards those stakeholders who are working in corporations. Because at the end of the day, I'm human, they are human. But sometimes there is this miscommunication happening where we don't see each other as human or human businesses. We see each other as objects, right? I'm really into the book that I'm reading right now is The Anatomy of Peace, where everything is being demystified. And that book talks about seeing people as people, or are we seeing each other as objects? And I realized that when we apply empathy throughout the supply chain, so not only empathy from the corporate businesses, but also empathy from my side. What can I do and take accountability in the actions that I can do? I can see a success story happening because in the past, I have dated companies for 9 months and still didn't have a PO. And that, as a solo person, that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. I mean, you would never go on so many first dates just to realize that the relationship is not a sustainable relationship. So why are we doing this when it comes to businesses, right? Why are we engaging in those challenging situations as well? And I want to bring up the following question, and that is, let me see. Um, how do you help organizations build a more inclusive and equitable supply chains in practice? I want to give you each 2 minutes to share. Lushentha.
I'm happy to go. Yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier in terms of this the education piece. Not everyone, I've worked in the big corporate and I know like not
Mm-hmm.
everyone understands the impact of their payment terms on you. And
Yeah.
I want to bring, I believe in the power of storytelling. And
Mm-hmm.
as a small business now, I feel your pain. I mean, I
Mm.
even have some corporates saying, oh, well, yeah, we're moving to 180 days payment terms. I'm like, 6 months? Would you like to receive your salary in 6 months? You know? So this is part of what we're building in with the academy is highlighting these challenges for our suppliers, helping them to say what is the best practice for supply diversity. And if you really want to be committed to ESDP and our suppliers, implement it. And this is the skills we're sort of offering them. It's
Mm-hmm.
people don't know what they don't know, right? It's highlighting it to them to say these are the sort of things you can do to actually improve. There's so many other organizations out there like Candex, things to help with payment terms. Because if some companies can pay in 7 days, these are big multinationals.
I
Why
know
others
that.
take
I've been a client of Candex, so I know that, and I can underline that as well. I can underline
exactly?
that part.
And if they can do it, then why are the other corporates struggling to do it? So it's bringing, and when I talk to us, they're like, oh, we didn't even know this was possible. So this is the role that we're playing is to be like, okay, these are sort of the best practices. We help you as part of our Inclusive Procurement Academy to actually bring this sort of knowledge to you to drive that going forward.
Okay.
Helping, making sure, because also what I find is, and the biggest, I'm going over my 2 minutes, but
Ooh.
a lot of it is being copy paste from the US to Europe with missing the fundamentals. It's
Mm-hmm.
bringing that fundamentals to Europe and be like, the why. What is our story in Europe? How do we build it from the bottom rather than be like, this is what it is. Let's place it here and make it work. And I'll hand
Thank
over
you,
to Andrea.
Andrea.
Yeah, I think, Vivian, I remember when we first met, I think it was in Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
you were already mentioning the same issues and challenges. So we're still there, right? We're still trying to make
Unfortunately,
things
yes.
better. But I think I also want to touch on what Lushentha said. It's really about living it in the whole company, because we talk about inclusive sourcing, we talk about supplier diversity, we talk about the supply chain, but the supply chain is only responsible for so and so much of the buying products and services in a company. There's usually RFP, request for proposal, request for prices, clip levels, whereas procurement has to be involved. But there is also lots and lots of businesses going out from decided by the business, maybe by, sales, marketing, whatever. And so the whole company actually has to be involved. They need to be aware. So it's from top down, it's communication, it's training, it's about having that overall diversity, equality, inclusion strategy, HR, as I said, supply chain, all in a holistic view, and having the right policies and practices in place. So it's not just there as a strategy, but there's also some guidelines, and making sure that the communication and the training and all that is there, so it doesn't turn out into a tick boxing exercise. So I think it's a whole lots of pieces that need to be put in place, that it's really working out well, and it's not just at the end of the day just about I need to do it because it will have impact on my salary or whatever.
Yeah, and also what I would like to add is, as a small business owner, you can do your due diligence, right? Have your list of questions that you can ask ahead of time, so that you are not being, slapped in the face when the moment that you hear, oh, they have a 60-day payment term, right? So ask that question ahead of time. Sometimes there is a possibility where you can maybe pre-invoice, right? So have that conversation with the different stakeholders that are involved of approving your invoice, so that you don't feel like you are dealing with Goliath, because oftentimes it is Goliath. Luckily, I have the resilience, but sometimes I don't have the longevity and the space to deal with Goliath, right? So I just want to make sure that I'm adding that as well. And we have reached almost the last two questions, and I want to ask the following, Lushentha. What steps can organizations in regions like Europe, but also beyond Europe, right? I know we're talking about Europe, but supply diversity is something that can be done globally. What can they do to close the gap and catch up in implementing supplier diversity programs?
I always say what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. And we keep talking about it as a nice to have, etc. But if companies are serious about closing the gaps, I know everyone's like now pulling back on their targets, but that's the US. Doesn't mean Europe needs to follow. It's an
Not
opportunity for
everybody.
you.
Not
Say again?
everybody. Not
Not
everybody is
everyone.
pulling back. Not
Not
everybody.
everyone.
Let's keep that clear.
But yeah, let's hope that Europe can use this opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
lead and not follow. And I truly
Mm.
believe the companies that I see that do successfully have the targets at the top, and they're the
Mm.
ones pushing me to get things done. So it's not just the nice to have, they're serious and they're committed to doing it. It's having as Andrea said, it's the guidelines and the policies inside, but it's having that culture, but actually understanding the importance of it and not isolating people while doing it. Everyone needs to
Yeah.
understand diversity is just not fair. Diversity is for everyone. I don't want just a team of people that look like me. I want a team of everyone, because that's when you get the true power of diversity. That's when you get the innovation. That's when you get the resilience. And when they understand the benefits of that for their company, then they will flourish in that. And that's when they use also just advocacy groups like us to help them to push this forward. Come to the events, engage in the suppliers, because I can tell you after every event that we have, suppliers or corporates that didn't even know about supply diversity, they were like, they'll just send me, this was amazing. I had the most amazing conversation with this supplier, etc. So it's taking those first steps, even if they don't have it yet, engage, and then um, we can help them take it forward.
Yeah, and also I want to demystify supplier diversity, right? The groups or the audience that can become certified. So there are different certification groups out there. Not naming all of them, but some groups are focused on supporting women. Some groups are focused on supporting those who have a disability, right? Some groups are focused on those who are part of a minority, and there are veteran groups. There are LGBTQ groups as
LGBTQ.
well. So do your due diligence and research as well what is applicable within Europe, which groups are active, which groups are not active yet, and have a conversation about that as well. Because maybe you're a man who has maybe a disability, or maybe you're a man of color. There are different groups for different people out there to support and create a way in for you to engage with big corporation. I just want to put it out there because I don't want you to get the sense that it's only about supporting women. I know that we women, we have a long way to go when it comes to engaging with corporations, but there are different groups supporting different suppliers as well who are not part of the majority.
Yeah.
Andrea.
And look at it. I mean, there's so much being done on the environment part. This falls into the social aspect. And also
Mm-hmm.
think about
Yeah.
like the impact, not just the impact it has for your company, but the
Mm-hmm.
impact it has on the socioeconomic impact. And
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do at ESTP is close the gap, that socioeconomic gap. This is where companies can contribute towards that.
Yeah. And when you win, everybody can win, right? So when you
Exactly.
do
When
that,
everyone's
everybody can
included,
win.
everyone wins.
Everyone wins.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
Thank you, Lushentha. Andrea.
yeah, I think what you just said, Vivian, is very, very important because it's not just about the corporates, right? We need the corporates to look at their supply chains. But on the other hand, we also need the diverse owned businesses, which are
Mm-hmm.
out there and making themselves visible. So there is also a bit of a cultural thing that you don't really want to flag yourself as being minority, women, disabled owned, LGBT plus owned. So I think it's also about it's both sides, right? We need to educate the
Mm-hmm.
corporates about supplier diversity, inclusive sourcing, what kind of impact they can achieve with buying from diverse owned businesses, but also we need to educate all of the diverse owned businesses what kind of opportunities they can get with making themselves visible. And you mentioned disability. I mean, about 15% of the population has a visible or invisible disability. So there's a
Exactly.
lot. It's not just
Yep.
about, really visible disabilities. It's also about, ADHS, depression,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
so on. So it's important that you are making yourself visible, work with the organizations like ESDP Disability, and I'm mentioning them now. So MSD UK, Upwritten, EGLCC, We Connect International, because I think we need to mention the names so the people know they're out there. They
True.
can
I agree.
reach out to the organizations and learn more. Um, some organizations provide free self-registration. You can just take a look and see what's going on without paying any money. And then there is also paid certification, which
It's
is
an investment.
right.
It's an
It's an investment.
investment
Yes,
because,
but it's
sorry to cut you, but
no,
to
go
be
ahead.
honest, it's an investment of you leveraging yourself, you getting maybe free publicity or visibility. Whereas I talked about Kendrick Lamar, and somebody shared a post about Kendrick doing the Super Bowl for free, but he gains a lot of visibility. Let's say that ESDP has provided different podiums, different stages that, for me, it seems similar to being part of the Super Bowl as an entrepreneur as well. And that is priceless. That is priceless PR that you're being put front and center. Not that they can commit that for everybody though, but they do push or future different people, especially when you are certified, you'll be highlighted as well. So I wanted to add that in. Sorry, Andrea.
No, totally. I think it also depends on how much you put in, right? If you're engaged,
Mm, yeah,
it's you totally get
yeah,
different feedback as
yeah.
if you just get certified and then you sit and wait. Probably not much will happen, but it's also
No,
about
true.
being engaged in the community, in the network, and putting yourself out there.
And that's a really good point, Andrea. Just to add my comment on this is I do struggle with the businesses that I meet. They're like, oh, I don't want to just get the contract because I'm a person of color or have a disability. It's nothing about that. It's always the
Hmm.
best business that we'll get. We're just shortening that
They're
starting
giving
line
us a
for
leg
you.
up,
Everyone,
a leg up.
exactly. So put that mindset away, put that imposter syndrome away. You are great. We're just opening up that door for you that you didn't have access to before. So we're
Hmm.
just closing that gap for you.
Yeah, I agree. One final wish. 2030 is coming soon. What do you hope when it comes to humanizing the workplace or the corporations and combined with supply diversity? What's that one thing that you wish to see, Andrea?
I think, probably wishful thinking that we're not needed anymore, right, Lushentha? But
Mm.
that's something
That's too
um, I,
soon.
I'd rather don't want to mention that. Yeah, it's only 5 years. So, but I think it's just that what we mentioned before, what the biggest challenges are, is really that understanding and visibility uh, and buy-in of having inclusive supply chains. I think it's very important to just understanding it. And then, I mean, it doesn't work for every company, right? If you don't have a lot of spend in your supply chain, you might rather look at different options, how to, create a more equal environment for your company. But I think it's really about having that understanding what you can achieve with buying from diverse social enterprises, and really thinking about it and see where you can move the needle maybe a little bit in your supply chain to really include more diverse small social businesses.
For me, it's I I don't want to see it as just a nice to have, but a priority within companies. And they can actually by then have success stories to see the impact. Because I'm so tired of everyone is like, oh, show me the business case. I'm like, okay, this exists. We know that diversity creates innovation and resilience. Now we need them to start seeing it, but the only way is that if they take action. So I want this to be embedded in company cultures. I agree with Vivian. I think we're still going to be around then, but at least hopefully now we've made steps forward to actually get the momentum behind this. And I would love to see more than just corporates, but how do governments play a role in this?
Ooh, that's a big one. That's a good one. Corporates and companies, but also
Another
what I
podcast.
hope what I hope to see in 2030 is supplier diversity making it all this way to the European Union by it being a law where at least it's a law for small business owners when they engage within Europe, they get paid 30 days. Because I recently encountered something within Italy where the payment terms are not, what I'm used to
Yeah,
here in the Netherlands. And it might be 60 days. And some companies, even in the US, have 90 days. And I'm just like,
exactly.
that's not equitable, especially when coming from me and you're hiring me to do DEI training. We are going to have a conversation. And it's true ESDP, but also true the different small business owners, different entrepreneurs that have gotten to grow this resiliency skill as well, right? I can go on, and maybe next time we can do something, or within a few months, do something about the government, because that's a part two of the
That's going
conversation.
to be a game
Yeah.
changer when
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
EU gets involved, and
Mm,
ESDP has been done some lobbying in the past, but
yeah.
once the EU gets involved, I think that's when you're really going to see us make a traction in this area.
Exactly. Thank you both for sharing so much insight, from different angles, from different perspectives. But we want to create an inclusive procurement where everybody wins, whether you're the stakeholder on the inside or stakeholder on the outside. Know that this is a topic where you can leverage the power of partnership and build resilience businesses from inside and out. Until next time, bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Vivian.
you.
Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you, Lushentha. Bye.